welcome to the Small Business Success Series, December 5th. Here we are, Q4. Before we kick things off, just to get an idea of who's in the crowd, we do this every time. So raise your hand if you are a business owner or entrepreneur. Okay, wow, that's why we do what we do. Anyone in marketing or creative or anything like that? Okay. I think that covers anything outside of those two. Raise your hand. Okay.
He just keeps raising his hand. He wants a prize.
So welcome everyone. Before I forget, Avery reminded me, our office manager, we have gifts for everyone. Cool stuff from Mr. Santa Claus. Please grab one on your way out. It's so funny when everyone comes in, everyone's afraid to grab a gift. Break the ice, grab one on your way out. There's some cool stuff in there. While we're waiting too, more free stuff. Scan the QR code, no strings attached. Something really cool that we do are these audits, and if nothing else, I think you'll find a lot of value from it for your startup, your company, your friend's company. Share it with a friend or what have you. So let's get into it. This will probably take about an hour. We've got three awesome speakers: Stephen Wonderly, raise your hand, Zach Weber, and Joshua Lee, all the way from Canada. Okay, so starting off, we have Mr. Stephen Wonderly. I've got a little bit of a bio here. Stephen's work has impacted millions of viewers and consumers over several decades. We're excited to bring his talents to our clients here at Big Red Jelly. They deserve the best, and Wonderly is the best.
I wrote my own bio.
Wonderly's storytelling style hits home in a world crowded with shameless promotion. His work has taken him on a winding road, touching the tech industry, entertainment, healthcare, education, and consumer goods. Good work depends on good clients, Stephen says. I genuinely love the clients I work with. I get deep into their motivations, the good they do, and find a way to capture that and share it. His work has been deployed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, MCA Universal Studios, Duke University, Children's Miracle Network, the American Toy Institute, National Adoption Association, Nature Conservancy, Fujifilm, and many others. So give it up for Stephen Wonderly, our speaker.
Is it that button? Or is it
the right arrow?
Oh, right arrow. Okay. Howdy. Good to see everybody. Boy, this room is always disconcerting, the audio. It's weird. They asked me for an interesting factoid. This is important to understand. I was in Nairobi with my wife, and I looked at the driver of the car, and he was looking right at me, so I crossed the road, and he ran right over me. And I ended up on the hood of the car, and it turns out he was not the driver. They drive on the wrong side of the road, and the guy that was driving wasn't looking at me. So know your audience. Know where you are. I want to talk about the psychology of choice and those things that affect it. Every time we do something creative, we have to draw from some well of knowledge, something that influences the way that we make decisions and something that influences the way our audience makes decisions. So let's try to understand why people choose. If you look at products out there, everything that you buy is in a very crowded house. Look at all these brands and what you're competing with. The most recent research I've seen says that something like 96% of advertising goes completely unnoticed. So think about that. When you are putting your brand out there and you're so proud of all the work you've put into it, it's going to go unnoticed unless you get it in the right place. So how do we narrow that down? You didn't narrow it down by verticals, right? So first by industry. Who am I competing with in my industry? Therefore, you start to look for people who are interested in your vertical. That's the first thing you do. Then you narrow it down a little bit further, start to look at your competition, And your competition isn't necessarily a product. We were talking with a client about this today. Your competition is anything that prevents your desired customer from purchasing your product. So it could be, your competition might just be price, for example. It might be apathy, so you've got to find a way to identify who your competition is. So if you look at these two, these are not the only phones in the marketplace, but it might be the only two phones that you're interested in. So you got to find a way to identify the playground you're playing in. When you finally make a choice, why did you make the choice? So who has an iPhone here? Does everybody have iPhones? Except for a couple losers, right, that don't have them? Okay. The truth is, Samsung phone is a better phone. And actually, even the Google phone is a better phone. The iPhone is cooler, frankly. It works in an ecosystem, and we identify with it. But technologically, it's not the best phone. So why do we make that choice? Why are we so loyal to it? Why are we willing to die for our iPhones, many of us? Talk about brand loyalty, and this is how do we create brand loyalty? How do we get our customers to die for our brand? Has anybody been in one of these? You've been in a tuk-tuk? Yeah. I was in India, and we go to get in this tuk-tuk, and it was really funny because I had a film crew with me, and we're picking them out of about 100 of them, ripping by and parked, and okay. We picked the one that had a Nike symbol painted on the back, which we just did jokingly, but I asked the driver, I said, why did you paint the Nike swoosh on the back of your tuk-tuk? And in his broken English, he told me basically that that's what people like. In other words, they've come to trust the Nike symbol. So you get all the way to India, in the middle of Bangalore, getting on a tuk-tuk, and he has a Nike swoosh because that branding gets him more customers. Pretty interesting. So, why do we make choices? It's interesting that when we have an experience, we then start to use that experience to influence what we buy. So, who we are and what we buy and what we believe is all determined by what our experiences are, our experiences in life. So, there's a great study on restaurants. If you have a bad experience at a restaurant, that equates into 10 people not showing up at your restaurant. If you have a good experience, then you get one more person to come. So bad news travels a lot faster than good news. That's why restaurants work so hard to make sure every detail is perfect. It's the same in all customer service. The negative is always going to multiply a lot faster than the positive. That's why you have to pay so much attention to your customers. And if you have one bad experience, you've got to quickly remedy it because that's going to turn into a loss of 10 customers. A good experience is only going to maintain your customers. So what we buy is based on what we've experienced, and what we experience determines who we are. It's interesting, we start to define ourselves by the experiences we've had. This is an interesting slide for me. It's a protest. And what people believe determines what their actions are. And so once they believe something, they're almost going to die for it. So you really want your customers first to go from curious about who you are to being a customer to being a martyr for your brand. So how many of you would switch to Samsung to save $200 a month? Yeah, the people that own Samsungs, right? How many would you give up your iPhone if you got to call and use your Samsung for free for the rest of your life? Maybe a few, right? But then there's those diehard martyrs that, no, I'm fine paying my $300-400 a month. I'm going to get the new phone all the time. Why is that? You think about it. There's something stuck in their psyche, this loyalty to that phone. That's what we try to create, is these martyrs for our brand. And how do we do that? It's an emotional play. We have to connect with them on an emotional basis, figure out what their needs are, what they identify with, and then become part of that identity. And being part of that identity means that they will now die for their cause before they'll switch brands. There's an interesting study done on wine. So which of these wines is more expensive? Left or right?
Right.
The right? Okay, why?
Looks more expensive.
It looks more expensive, right? So a group of behavioral scientists started to do this for some advertising firms. And those behavioral scientists, they're very manipulative. They love manipulating people and seeing what makes us tick. So they took some wine, and they took the same wine and put it in two different bottles. And then one bottle had a fancy label, and one bottle had kind of a crappy label. And they tested it with consumers and said, which one is the better wine? Not the most expensive, but which one's better? And they all, like maybe one person who didn't understand wine, but the rest of them all picked the expensive bottle and said, this is a much better wine. It's the same wine. It's all about perception, and perception is what makes us make these choices, whether it's a sense of belonging, a sense of status, a sense of accomplishment. All of those things are emotions that we make decisions based on. This is another interesting study. So this was done by another group that studies consumers, and they found that investors were more likely to invest in important initial public offerings of companies whose name or ticker symbols were easy to pronounce than in companies with complicated names or symbols. So think about that. You may have a great company, and it's going to outperform everybody else at NASDAQ, but if you have a group of symbols or something that looks like it's not a great company, investors aren't going to invest in it just based on your name. So think about that when you name a company. Think about that when you name a promotion or who you identify with. All right, another study. Coke fans, Pepsi fans, which one tastes better? Will you die on that sword? Yeah. So Pepsi did this really cool ad. They put together these blind tests, and they had people taste cola, and they said, wow, tell us which one tastes better. And it was like 8 out of 10 people picked Pepsi without knowing it. And then when they showed them which cola it was, how many people were willing to change brands? It's interesting. They wouldn't change brands because Coca-Cola was the brand that their lifestyle most appealed to. So if you think about the Coca-Cola ads back in the 70s, this is when they figured it out. Back in the 70s, they figured out we're a lifestyle, we're not a soft drink. So we're going to advertise how good you feel and how great of friends you're going to have, what a community you belong to if you are part of the Coca-Cola Club, right? And bars picked up on that too. Bars were really interesting because bars started Coke and rum. You don't say Pepsi and rum, you say Coke and rum, right? Another interesting study is from Red Bull. Red Bull could not get into the bars with their drinks. They made it taste medicinal because they wanted people to believe that it's good for you. Therefore, it must taste a little. If it tastes too good, then people aren't going to believe that it's going to give them all that energy. And then when they started selling it to bars, none of the bars would take it. So what they started doing is crushing like hundreds of cans and throwing them into garbage cans outside of the bars or around the bars. And people would see these Red Bulls and go, oh, Red Bull. And they would ask for a Red Bull and a vodka when they went into the bar. So there's a lot of guerrilla tactics too, but you have to think about perceptions of how your brand is perceived. It's got to taste a little bit bad because it's good for you. I mean, Red Bull, all that stuff that's in there could taste a lot better. All right, so we need physical manifestations of our emotional experiences. What does that mean exactly? We like awards, we like badges, we like something that shows us that we did something. Again, life is all about experiences. interesting study on memories. People, they were asked about their childhood memories, and these are people who had documented their lives from the times that they were young. And what they asked them is, okay, tell us about your childhood. And people who had more good memories than bad tended to forget all the bad things that happened to them. And people that were traumatized in their childhood, they didn't remember any of the good because the trauma outweighed anything good that happened. So memory is selective, and we really start to create our own experiences. What we have to do as companies is provide tools for people to have their own experiences. What can we do that makes them have an experience that they identify with, that they cling to, that they want to remember, and then what they want to die for? So, how many of you have been to Disneyland? And what happens when you come off a ride? What's the first thing you go through? Yeah, the gift shop. That was a brilliant psychological move I think it was in the early 70s that Disney started doing that. They build their gift shops there. And I think of traditional amusement parks. They have the ride, and then they'll have other kind of gift shop stuff around and some food. Disney was very smart in that as soon as you get a dopamine rush from going on a ride, you want to remember that. You want some evidence of having done that. And the evidence is in these, $2 toys that they sell for $40. So Disney made a fortune on these kind of things, these action figure type things. And then George Lucas figured out when he sold Star Wars, he said, I'll take a piece of the movies, but I want all of the rights to the merchandise. Because he understood that people wanted evidence of having seen a good film or being part of something. That evidence is where you find that Nike swoosh on the back of a tuk-tuk, or that's why we like our labels, to be visible. I worked with some real estate guys once in Los Angeles, and it was really funny because they would come to these meetings, and half of them, their ties would be kind of flopped over so you could see the Hermes label, the $400 tie, because they needed that status. It's the same reason that we buy watches, right? We don't want a cheap watch. We want to tell people that we paid 10 grand for that watch. So we want these physical manifestations of who we are. And that's where branding comes in. Your brand has to speak to that sense of community. All right, so quickly, why do middle-class kids join gangs? We're going to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect here and cognitive bias, but middle-class kids join gangs because they're not getting emotionally fulfilled at home, so they want to belong to something. They want a sense of identity. And once psychologists started figuring this out, they could start helping these kids who join gangs that have, they're middle-class kids, but they need some sort of emotion, so they started all these after-school programs, and that started to stem the flow of these kids joining gangs. So it's interesting, if you think about why we do what we do as human beings, we do it mostly because we want to belong. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is really interesting. It's a cognitive bias. And what they found out is that the less people know about something, the more confident they are that they know everything. So how often are you at dinner with somebody like this or online with somebody like this, especially in the elections? The conversations quickly devolve into name calling because people think that they know everything based on a few articles they've read. And so that becomes cognitive bias, and then you can't move them off of their opinion for anything because they're not willing to go any deeper. This works in our favor in advertising because we can give them enough facts because they won't read deeply, but give them enough to think that they know exactly where they want to be. In other words, their sense of competence goes up. Again, what we want to do is get them to be passionate about what they believe in. Here's the other thing about this crowd, too. It takes 10 times at least as much effort to get somebody to change their mind as it does to make up their mind. So when you look at your audiences that you're selling products to, look for those people who are in the decision-making process. Everybody says, yeah, I want to go compete with Nike or Adidas or one of the major brands. it's a lot easier to innovate in a space that doesn't have a major player in it yet. So who knows Skull Candy? You know the Skull Candy earbuds? So one of the things that they did that was amazing is, first they created a really cool design. Secondly, they entered in a market that didn't have a lot of competition yet. Like there wasn't high-end or cool earbuds yet or earphones. Bose had some stuff that was very European feeling, but for the average guy going out snowboarding, they didn't have this something that was really cool. Philips was doing something. I was doing some work for Philips at the time, and they were wondering, God, how is Skull Candy kicking our butt? Their earbuds are not good quality. Our stuff is a lot better. And the answer was obvious. You guys have a really ugly logo. Your earbuds are for old people. Like, they have nailed the audience. So you want you want to reach your consumers before they've made up their mind. All right, so lastly, what are the things that help us make up our mind? These are the things this is where you play, right? So you've got color, culture, context. I made that alliteration so it's easy to remember. So look how Nike is recognizable without the name. Culture, pay attention to your culture, especially if you're doing stuff around the world. There's different cultures that are going to be attracted to your brand for different reasons. But what is the culture? You can't sell a skateboard culture to somebody who's talking about retirement, right? So be cognizant of the culture and then pick up on those cues. Color is always interesting. If you look at also environment, how does your product fit within the environment? This is metaphorical because most stuff is online now, but how do you fit within that environment? Are you standing out in the environment? Because 96% of advertising doesn't even get paid attention to at all, you got to find a way to get their attention first before you can deliver the message. So how do you stand out? Is that in a unique way, a unique channel? Is it a unique message, a unique photograph? Years ago, there was a company called Benetton. I did some work for Benetton in New York years ago, and they were just sweaters. And they did very, very cool sweaters in a lot of different colors, and they were high-end and pretty small when they first started. So their first ad was a nun kissing a priest. And that was their full-page ad in magazines. Had nothing to do with the product, but it was so arresting, people wanted to know who this company was. So the whole ad was the nun kissing a priest, and then down here it said Benetton, and that was it. People exploded looking for this company. The last thing is experience. So what happens is this phenomenon called social contagion. That means that once one person starts to get in love with a product, they start to spread the word through word of mouth. That's what we call viral now. But before viral, there's always this network of humans that are always talking to each other in a number of ways. So what Starbucks did that was really fascinating is that he made a coffee shop, but he said, I'm not in the coffee business. I'm in the experience business. So think about that. He wanted to give people an experience. So free Wi-Fi, a comfortable place to sit, a place to do business, a place to meet and carry on conversations. Oh, and by the way, we have coffee and it's $6 a cup. But it became a place, well, the coffee's not any better. I don't drink coffee, but my friends that do say Dunkin' coffee is a lot better. But you go to Starbucks because you can sit down. You get the Wi-Fi. Now people are in the habit of that, and they can sit and they can tell their friends, they can have meetings there. So this social contagion, it's spread like crazy. And Starbucks now, I don't know how many locations they have. I think it's 6,000? I don't know, I'm looking at Josh, I can't remember. But tons. So you want to start with the elements, you want to have the right environment, and then you want to give them the right experience. So that's the end. Perception is influence. So we always talk about how do we influence people. It's all about perception. So you got to control the perception first, and you control the perception by giving people experiences, not necessarily prices or anything else. So that's it. Any questions? Who's up?
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Mr. Wonderly? Raise of hands. no further
If you go to Nairobi, pay attention to which direction the cars are coming.
While we're prepping Zach's microphone, a couple shout outs. Mark, if you guys can raise your hands. So, quick round of applause for these guys. They provided all the food and drinks. And they're going to be speaking at the next event. That's official. They're our SEO, Google Ads, advertising partner. They're the best in the business. So, if that is anything of interest to you, I just recommend picking their brain while they're here. So, grab them after, chat with them, but we really appreciate our partners on Bridge. So, thank you guys. One quick thought with Wonderly, quick shout out while we prep for Mr. Zach here. One thing I've really come to appreciate in working with Wonderly at Big Red Jelly is whenever we're working with clients, and this is just a quick maybe reminder for all you entrepreneurs here, but you'll be talking with the CEO, COO, founder, co-founder, startup, entrepreneur, what have you, and we see the business owner just start to express their opinion, and Wonderly always does a good job of kind of pausing them and saying, well, what does your audience really want? So I think he's got a real knack for always bringing it back to what does the customer want? So when was the last time that you sat down, went to Starbucks with one of your customers and asked them why they chose your product or service? I don't think enough of us small business owners do that, right? We get lost in the sauce with analytics and quantitative data. I think qualitative data is undervalued. Okay. So Mr. COO here, Zach, and brother of mine, quick bio.
Everybody's brother.
If Zach could spend every single weekend in the mountains hiking, climbing, camping, and fishing, he would. We would definitely talk to you about it. He and his wife enjoy spending time together, woodworking, gardening, accumulating power tools, and going to bed before 9:30 p.m. Wow. He is currently working on a podcast that brings short story authors and storytellers together. His eye for design and attention to detail is rivaled by none.
It's an old bio.
Big Red Jelly's clients thoroughly enjoy getting to know his friendly, calm, and personality while collaborating on website projects. Zach graduated from BYU, played rugby throughout his time there. His passion for self-sustainability is contagious, and he consistently sets an amazing example for the team on how to enjoy and excel in the work we do. So give it up for Zach.
Got to start my timer. Last time I went over and people started throwing things at me. Josh, my own brother, wrote that bio. It's an old one. And he also could not think of 3 facts about me, which is really cool. I'm one of the website guys at Big Red Jelly. Is this anybody's second or third time at these events? Anybody here? I know I see a couple familiar faces. There we go. Mr. Prescott. If you've been here before, you know I like to talk a lot about websites because that's what I do all day. But I figured today I'll switch it up a little bit and talk a little bit more about our discovery process and our positioning process when we're working with clients, specifically identifying and relating to ideal customers. At Big Red Jelly, I talked about this last time a lot as well, but we like to talk more about ideal customers as opposed to target audiences. And the reason why is because ideal customers actually spend money, right? Your target audience, most of them won't spend money. If you're an e-commerce store, 95, 96, 97% of your audience will never actually convert, and so they will never actually spend money. So we like to talk about ideal customers as opposed to target audiences. So in this presentation, I'm going to be going over some anecdotes, some examples. None of the creatives or videos or ads that you're going to see or anything that we've done, it's not going to be a show and tell, but just good examples of some concepts that I think are applicable to small business owners, entrepreneurs, etc., and medium-sized business owners. Don't want to exclude those guys. Josh kind of touched on this just now. Quantitative research is easy to come by. If you have a Facebook business page or Google Analytics set up on your site, or if you're on Shopify, provide really awesome analytics, or any other social media platform, they're going to give you a lot of this stuff, and I'm not going to go into any of it because a lot of this is demographic info that really isn't going to help you because it's all audience related. But I do want to touch on these last couple, motivators and purchasing decisions. And Wonderly did a really good job of talking about this and what motivates people to make decisions, especially when it comes to purchasing decision or brand decisions. So with that in mind, do not confuse followers and subscribers with customers. It's really, really easy to pull up Google Analytics and say, wow, 75% of my audience or of my users or my website visitors are female between the ages of 25 and 35. Those are my ideal customers. Do not do that because a lot of the time your followers and subscribers are not your customers. They're not the decision makers. Sometimes they are, but a lot of the times they're not, so you have to add that caveat. And why do we focus on customers? Because ideal customers actually spend money. So there's not a symbol for sometimes not equal to, so I just use this one, I apologize. But end user is not always or sometimes not equal to your ideal customer. Some of the best examples of this are children's toys, think squirt guns, Nerf guns, etc. The end user is the child. The ideal customer is the parent of the child, the person making the purchasing decision, the person writing the check, the person putting the credit card info at the website, right? Buying the Christmas gifts, etc. We recently did work with a retirement home / hospice provider. And during our discovery, we were talking with them and saying, okay, tell us about your ideal customer. And they immediately started talking about the residents of the homes. I'm like, okay, that's great, that's fantastic. Then we went and did our own research and did our own kind of discovery and said, well, it turns out that actually most, in fact, 2/3 or more of your residents are paying for their services with the help of their adult children, right? So who's actually writing the check, who's actually putting the credit card info in is the adult children of the residents. And so along with that, who's writing the check, they want to be involved in the decision of where their parents should end up, which retirement home or hospice center they should go with. And so we came back with that and said, hey, we should talk about positioning your website, talk about positioning your brand to appeal to both of these user groups. Could you be successful by just having a website that talks to the residents? I'm sure you could, right? Could you have a successful website that relates to just the adult children of the residents of retirement homes and hospice centers? I'm sure you could. But if you correctly identify, hey, there's two audience groups here, and the ideal customers are the people who are paying for it, the adult children, that's going to help you to better relate to them and increase your conversion rates, hopefully, right? Oh, preview, okay. Along this note of end users and ideal customers, I'm about to play this ad. It's a Michelin ad, it's an old one. They had a campaign that they ran for a really long time, and the theme was the same, and we're about to see it. But as we're watching this, think about who the ideal customer is, who's spending the money, and who the end user might be, and who we're trying to attract in this situation.
My baby got her driver's license.
Baby, I'm 18, Mom.
I still don't think you're ready to drive alone. Well, who knows if you can handle the car in an emergency?
But Mom, you can't protect me all my life. At some point, you've got to let go.
Before I do, you're going to have two things. A little more experience and a set of Michelins.
Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
I love that, first of all. But you have to understand for your ideal customer, you have to get into their mindset and say, well, what's in it for me? And relate to that decision-making process. So whatever you're selling, if you're just selling life insurance, if you're selling merchandise online, or maybe you're a clothing line or something. You have to be thinking for your ideal audience and say, hey, what's in it for me as my ideal audience? And so this Michelin ad, if you were to close your eyes and listen to that ad without the visuals, you hear the conversation between the mother and the teenage daughter, and you're realizing it's very obvious that the ideal customer, the person buying the tires, is not the end user. The person that you need to relate to is not the teenage daughter, right? The actual driver of the car. The person you need to relate to is the person who's buying the cars to keep their daughter safe, right? Here's another example of what's in it for me. It's very touchy, this thing, man, it's sensitive. Who knows what car company invented the seat belt? Volvo. Oh, yeah, lots of people. I love it. And basically ever since, they've really leaned into that and said, hey, we're going to be the safety brand. We're going to watch a Volvo ad here. Something I despise about car commercials is how they always end with 5.8% APR and $1,500 in mail-in rebate. By the time you get down to the dealership, that promo is over, or you don't qualify because my credit score is too low. Happened once or twice, but this ad appeals to the customer because they've identified Volvo. They know what the ideal customer is thinking, what's in it for me? Let's watch this one.
Every morning at 4:30, you hear the cooks hop on the floor. It's hard times in the mill, my love, hard times in the mill. Every morning just at 5, gotta get up, dead or alive. It's hard times in the mill, my love, hard times in the mill. Every morning right at 6, don't that old bell make you sick? Hard times in the mill, my love, hard times in the mill. Every morning at 4:30.
That's cool. We have some young parents in the audience. Anybody relate to that? You gotta get a Volvo. So understanding your customer's emotions is a very important part of understanding how your customers make decisions when purchasing products. Could they have made an ad that talks about lane assist and how there's 6 cameras, 2 in the front and 4 on the back, and how it uses AI to keep it in the lane? Sure. Would that have been as impactful or as memorable as connecting with parents, new parents who are happy and enthusiastic when they first have a child, and then quickly realize how tiring and distracted it can become, and how lane assist can help them with that and manage that stress? We're gonna watch another one here. When I say Polaroid, what emotions, what adjectives come to mind? This is a real question. Anybody? Polaroid. No. Okay. Nostalgia. That's your hand. Vintage. What was that?
Quick, like fast.
Instant, quick, fast. Same thing. Spontaneous, maybe. What was that? Memories. Ooh, I love this. Falling right into my trap. So we're gonna watch a Polaroid ad. It's a little bit Marvel-esque, probably overdone, but it illustrates a good example. Let's watch this one. told you it was overdone, but does anybody watch Smarter Every Day, the YouTube channel? Some people in the back. So Polaroid actually does a really good job of continuously evolving their technology, their film, their cameras, all of that. And it's very impressive. You should go check them out on Smarter Every Day. Really cool YouTube channel. But they don't talk about any of that in this situation. Instead, they choose to identify and relate to the ideal customers, right? The two subjects in that ad, probably millennials, maybe Gen Z. Is that the next generation after millennials?
Younger?
Yeah, Gen Z. How many people can relate to that first scene or clip of the young lady doom scrolling on the couch, realizing she's not living in the moment and puts her phone down, right? And then the young man realizes, oh, this is a good opportunity to be spontaneous, to be candid, right? And so they've done a good job. You think Polaroid has done its research into what are the emotions and what are the driving factors of their ideal customers when they're buying a Polaroid? I think so. Nobody buys a Polaroid anymore to actually take like portraits or anything. They buy a Polaroid for the nostalgia. They buy the Polaroid for the spontaneity that it kind of conveys and brings with it. So understanding your customer decision making is all part of that. Anybody wear Patagonia? Should cover that up. This Patagonia jacket. It's getting cold. Patagonia's going out. This is a real ad from I think 2011. It says, "Don't buy this jacket." Pretty terrible ad. If that was all that it was. What they don't show you is under the fold. Continued is don't buy this jacket unless you need a new one. Unless your old one is worn out, unless you're going to recycle that one, because they've correctly identified and relate to their users. Patagonia is not just an outdoors brand, it's not just a winter coat brand. It's a brand that's eco-friendly. It's a brand that recycles. I think they're technically an E Corp. Is that what it's called? An environmental corporation? Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But that ad, probably in an ironic twist, probably ended up selling more jackets because they've correctly identified and relate to their end user, right? Because they know that their end users value companies and relate with companies that recycle, that reuse, that are sustainable, that are green, quote unquote. And so I love this example of identifying and relating to your ideal customers. So how do we bring this all back? We probably don't have the budget or the means or the production team to make some of these really awesome ads. I fully recognize that. Big Red Jelly probably doesn't either. Those are really high quality ads, probably cost millions of dollars, but you do have some control over the content and creatives that you're putting out, your brand messaging, your brand imagery, your name, which Josh was going to get into, your website, whether you built it on Wix or Shopify or WordPress or Squarespace, it doesn't matter. Realistically, you have about 3.5 seconds, and this number is going down as we get into the Reels or the, what do they call it, YouTube Shorts environment. You have less than 3.5 seconds before your audiences start forming semi-permanent, oh, what have I done? I'm printing something. Anyways, you have about 3.5 seconds before your audiences start making semi-permanent opinions about your brand, right? So if you're putting out social creatives, if you're making social media posts, if you're making short videos, or the messaging, the first header on your website, you have to find something, whether it's emotions, whether it's their purchasing decisions, whether it's the benefits, the what's in it for me. You have to find something in your target audience that they will relate to, that they will connect to, and that will make a permanent positive opinion about your brand. Wonderly went into this, but 10 times the energy and effort to change an opinion, right? So your first opinion really, really matters. And so you have to make sure that you're relating to your target audience and your ideal customers very early. There are some bad ways of doing this. We're not going to watch the whole ad. I could be wrong. I know some people have talked about, hey, it's actually performing really well, but in my opinion, I think they've confused their target audience with their ideal customers. I think their audience now is huge. It's probably 10x, 100x, what it ever was. But I think that their ideal customers and the ideal customer base has probably shrank as a result of this ad. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is the Jaguar rebrand ad. Go look it up.
You wouldn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know from this or the whole ad, honestly. So that's it from me, guys. A little bit less practical. Usually I like to get into tools, design tips, or tips and tricks. I didn't this time, but if you want to chat after, I'm happy to go into WordPress, Wix, Shopify, or tools that you can use, content management systems, reputation management, etc. But I figured I'd try something a little bit different, a little bit more fun this time. But that is it from me. Thank you. I still went over. I tried. I really tried. Any questions?
Any questions for Zach while he's here? I raise your hands. Okay. While we're prepping Joshua, just being a little bit more high level. If there are two pieces of homework so far, homework piece number one for everyone in this room is to go talk to one of your ideal customers and get away from the quantitative data we've been consuming. Shout out Qualtrics.
Look, it's me.
And get a little bit into the qualitative. Like sit down and have lunch with some of your clients and customers and ask them these questions that Wonderly posed or that Zach posed. And then step two, last little anecdote, but Hermes Paris, speaking of the brand, Hermes, they came out a few years ago. They spend 80% of their ad spend on 5% of their audience. So they know what that ideal customer is, who's the tribe, who are the martyrs, and they focus their efforts there. So especially for small business owners where your budget is limited, you have to really understand who your tribe is and go after the tribe. So to introduce Mr. Canada here, Joshua Lee,
Captain
Canada. Meet Joshua Lee, our last speaker this evening, you guys. A creative brand strategist who loves solving problems and helping businesses connect with people. He takes time to understand what makes each business special and uses that to build strategies that drive growth. Joshua combines creativity with action, creating unique brands that stand out and make an impact. He's always learning and improving, focusing on helping businesses succeed by staying true to their purpose. Give it up for Joshua.
Thank you. Okay, so my presentation today is going to be a little bit more hands-on. We're going to be talking about a pretty specific vertical in a brand. Now, a lot of people sometimes confuse a logo with a brand or a name with a brand, but logo, colors, everything is part of a brand. And so this is going to be something quite specific. And we're just going to be covering the fundamentals. There's a lot more to get into. But for this, due to time, we'll just talk really vague or just the starting point. Like Josh Weber was saying, I'm one of the brand strategists at Big Red Jelly, and I focus on logo design, strategy, color theory, brand naming, and more. These are a handful of brands I've done. This is my beautiful wife, and even more beautiful, well, not more beautiful, but just as beautiful daughter. And I'm so lucky to have them. I did grow up in Canada, and am currently immigrating, so thank you for the green card. Like I said, I've been at Big Red Jelly for about 18 months, and in that time I've worked on just over 50 brands, and a lot of them have needed very severely and wanted a new name. And so we're going to kind of break this up into two parts. The first one being, why is it important to have like a good, strong name, or why it matters? And then secondly, the qualities that make a name strong. So why a name, or why your brand name matters? Can I just get a quick raise of hands of like who either owns a business or has thought of like being an entrepreneur in the future and need to name a business? Perfect, a lot of hands, perfect. That's good, and this is important because like what was kind of been repeated, it's kind of been the theme of today of that first impression, right? And your name is a big part of that. It'd be the first maybe verbal, written, and video or whatever, social media interaction with your brand. The second thing on why a brand is important or why it matters is that it can convey a meaning to your audience, right, or ideal client immediately. And then lastly, a name connects and can connect with your future customers. Okay, so I want you guys to kind of think in your mind what the difference is or what the contrast is between liquid death, and San Pellegrino, right? They both kind of have that different essence. And so their name matters. It makes an impression right off the bat. There's a vibe, there's like a rebellious feeling for Liquid Death and a lot more of a sophisticated feeling for San Pellegrino. And so you can ask yourself that, like, what does my name, or what do I want my name to make others feel? And is that consistent with what my purpose is, what I value, etc.? So secondly, name conveys a meaning. This could be your purpose, this could be your personality, your values, expectations, etc. One of the brands that we worked with over a year ago was Utah Valley Animal Rescue. And they had a real problem on their hands for almost a decade of really blending in with their competitors. So much so that they had a competitor which was South Utah Valley Animal Shelter. And so it really diluted the power and purpose that they had as a brand. And so that was something that we really wanted to focus on working with them was, what's your purpose? How can we leverage that? And it was to care for lost animals or alone animals. And that inspired the name All Paws Count as the rebrand. And the change here was that it was a refresh, a brand new start for them. It kind of took me a little bit of convincing and selling them on this idea to make them go for it. But in the long run, it's been like dramatic. Was it Zach? Did you see their truck? They had their truck with their logo on it and everything. So they really embraced it. Oh no. This is not my slide, by the way. I don't know what this is. Just give me a second. So one of the questions you can ask yourself with this is, I don't know if my clicker's not working anymore. Cool. You can ask yourself, do people get confused, or will people get confused if I use this name? Is it not clear enough? Does it blend into the rest of my competitors? And then does it relate to my purpose? That's another thing that's really huge and you can leverage here. All right. Connecting with your customers. So for this, we worked with a company called Optimum Kids Hydration. This is a mouthful. And right off the bat, you can go to the next slide. Oh, it does work. Thanks. Right off the bat, I was like, dude, you got to change your name. No kid under the age of 74 is going to buy this. And I actually, in our discovery call, grabbed an Intel ad and put his logo on it, his old one, and you couldn't tell the difference. And it was the ad was like, it's what inside that counts. And I'm like, dude, you're the same as Intel. You're not going to sell the kids. And so that's what we focused on. We identified his mission, we focused it for kids, and the other thing was that he was wanting to compete in a space that was highly competitive with Gatorade, like big brands, Prime Hydration, which is super hot right now for that younger generation. And so we needed to take his name very, very seriously because it needed to be something that had energy and could really motivate kids to want to participate in that. And so we rebranded it to Thirst Hydration with a little misspelling because kids can't spell, right? I couldn't spell as a kid. I still can't spell. Yeah, this is a purpose spelling mistake. It's not an accident. And this was huge because it gave energy, it gave competition. We even took some inspiration from like you can see the texture on the bottle from like comic books. Like we really wanted to fill this out and have it be directly for kids and relate to them. And so from here, kind of going off of what Stephen and Zach have both mentioned in the past, is like, what is your audience value? What is your ideal client value? And does my name relate to that? If there's a disconnect, then it might be time to reconsider things. All right, so as a recap, again, the reason why your name matters is it's your first impression. It can convey meaning, and it can connect to your customers. Part 2, qualities of a strong brand name. First one is a name needs, these are the like brand naming 101. So if you're going to take notes, now's the time to take notes. Number 1 is it's memorable. Your name has to be memorable. The stickier it is in the minds of those who interact with it, the better. Now, there's a couple approaches you could do here. These are just some. One of them, which Coca-Cola uses, is alliteration, rhyming with StubHub, and then uncommon words or unfamiliarity with Kodak. TikTok is another example of rhyming, and tic-tac also. Anyway. Next is to have it be easier to pronounce. Now, I've kind of been a victim of doing this because I really like Latin names and the meanings there. And so sometimes I've, in the past, chosen names that are a bit hard to pronounce. But Crumble does a good job of having a name where it's misspelled. It's a bit more unique, right? It follows that uncommon theme. People are like, oh, it's spelled wrong. Catches their attention, but it's still easy to pronounce, easy to spell, easy to remember. Luxury brands, I don't know why, they're always like super, well, I do know why, but it's very hard to pronounce. Like, you speak French, right, Josh? What does that say? Yves Saint Laurent? No. Say half the letters, you'll get it half the time. And so a trick you could do is you could write down your brand name and pass it to someone who doesn't know what it is, and if they read it out wrong, then try to redo it. If they say it right, then you're on the good track. Next one is to be unique. Please, for the love that is all that is holy, do not name your brand after your last name and what you do. Please do not be Johnson's Plumbers. It's really overdone. It doesn't speak to your audience. It doesn't do a lot for you. And a lot of the time, older brands that are still successful and have a name that's named after the person is because it has so much name recognition already. So there's no point in them changing it. But if you're starting out, try to avoid this. You can use unexpected words again, and then combination of words. There's a whole multiple categories on under each of these elements that you can get into, which if you want to know, you can come talk to me after. And then make sure to check with competitors and try not to overlap too much there, or else you'll end up like Utah Valley Rescue, where they have the exact same name as their main competitor. And then the last quality that makes a really strong brand name is personality. All of really popular brands, again, Nike, Patagonia, Apple, they fall under this categoria, where their name gives an essence, right? There's like a feeling connected to it. There's an emotional connection. Nike, like the phrasing, the verbiage of it is actionable, it's powerful, it's movement. And so that subconsciously can speak to customers and your audience. In Patagonia, for example, we've mentioned them. They're adventurers, right? Patagonia is if you don't know already, a mountain range in South America. And so these, like your personality can be anything aligned with your brand values, matches your voice, and speaks directly to your audience, like with Thirst. One of my most favorite brands, not this one, we rebranded, but SOS Support came to us as well with this same approach. They needed to, they were wanting to actually completely shift where they were positioned in their market for IT support. And so they wanted to move from more of a reactive positioning to a proactive positioning. And we used the theme adaptation and foresight to kind of guide that. And so with that, we had the name Vigilant IT as that new brand name. And what that gave, or the definition of it, is alertly watchful, especially to avoid danger, right? And this was so cool. They loved this name so much that they, and embraced it, that they actually renamed the titles of their like CEO and like head of marketing, whatever, to match the brand name and match the overall theme of the brand. And they just took it and ran with it, which was amazing. So again, qualities of a strong brand name. Number one, it needs to be memorable. It can be long, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be short to be memorable, like all paws count is loud or long, but it is memorable. It's kind of a good phrase. Needs to be easy to pronounce. If people can't pronounce it easily, it increases friction, and so it'd be harder for them to remember. If it's unique, stands out, doesn't blend in, it will also be easy to remember. And then the personality, which I feel is like the just little cherry on top, adds even more memorability. Thanks. Any questions at all, Stephen?
Yeah, would you, you have probably the most extensive process for getting to the essence of a brand, of a lot of the designers that I've worked with over the years. I want you to explain that a little bit. Like, how do you tackle, what are the steps? It's like a 1-2 minute, but it's fascinating to me the depth that you go to in researching before you get to a solution. How do you, tell me about your process.
Well, the process I like to follow is really trying to understand the purpose of the brand outside of the monetary value that the owner gets. So it's like, what else are you trying to accomplish besides provide for your family and, you know, make a lot of money that motivates you to do what you do? And from then that core idea or purpose, everything else can kind of come to fruition. And I know the brand team, we all try to figure that out. Like, that one thing is the most important thing in our discovery calls, to figure out like for Patagonia, for example, it's to, like, they fight against unsustainable clothing. Like, outside of money, that's their purpose, or that's their mission, right? And it all kind of falls together. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I just am fascinated by the way you make decisions. Like, you don't wake up in the middle of the night and draw a logo and go, oh, that's it.
You'd be surprised.
I would be.
I'm like drawing in my sleep.
Oh, there it is.
Zach sleepwalks, I sleep draw.
Yeah, but I watch you work, and it's like, you know, this curvature has to be represent this symbol. This I drew from this part or element of what you do. I mean, I was just kind of fascinated with the way that you approach the problem.
Yeah, the process is really just like when you have that core idea, everything else can really fall into place. Like, I just finished up a brand about a week ago that is a golf gym, like a performance gym, and the whole premise of their brand was to nothing great was built in a comfort zone. Like, they were embracing challenge, they were embracing hard times, and that was like so cool to have as a theme through the rest of their brand. Where their name was like the Latin name was Audens, and it meant like to be. It was unconquerable. That's what it was. That was the word, right? And so if you're constantly out of the comfort zone, you're unconquerable, right? Nothing could stop you, and that was the whole idea. Any other questions about naming a brand? I'm here all night. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned people being able to pronounce it
Mm-hmm.
correctly by reading it. I wonder when Nike came up there, like how many people would correctly pronounce Nike if they never read it before, never heard about it before? Would they say Nike?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just wanted to see is that always the case where it's
There is a bit of a caveat with pronunciation, just for language barriers and accents and stuff. One strategy that I was actually researching was that sometimes if you're wanting to be an exclusive brand, and this kind of goes back to the luxury brands, you purposefully make your name hard to pronounce to give the essence of only people who can pronounce their name can be part of the club kind of thing, right? So Saint Laurent does that. Lamborghini, try to spell Lamborghini. You can't, right? And that's on purpose. So there is a technique there. I'd say for Nike, it's still something you can see the word in your mind, right? You can spell it in your mind. Nike. I spelled that right? Just kidding. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, we can talk after. Any other questions? Cool. Thank you.